Recently, I came across this PS4 Slim, and for some reason, it just wouldn't work. At first, I almost sold it for scrap, but then I had a different idea. I've seen people turn broken consoles into gaming PCs before, and it's always impressive, but most of them rely on external power or integrated graphics, so I wanted to push it further. What if I build a complete PC inside this PS4 with a real GPU, a proper power supply, all packed inside the original shell? And the goal? Keep the outside looking as close to stock as possible. So today, that's exactly what I'm going to try. Let's get started. And here it is, the main character of this build. From the outside, it actually looks pretty clean and well kept, but as soon as I plugged it in and tried to power it on, nothing. Completely dead. I'm not a professional hardware repair technician, so instead of trying to revive it, I decided to move on. My mission now is to tear it down and reuse what I can. First, I remove the top cover. Just by gently pushing at the corners, it pops right off. Next, I take out all the screws holding the top panel in place. Once that's done, I disconnect the battery, then I move on to the bottom cover. To remove it, there's a key screw near the hard drive area that needs to come out first. After that, I carefully pry up both sides and slide the panel backward to release it. Now you can see everything inside this PlayStation 4, from the motherboard to the optical drive bay. And wow, there are a lot of screws. I had to deal with nearly 20 of them. I'll fast forward through this part, but after quite a bit of effort, I finally removed all the screws, took out the motherboard, the Blu-ray drive, and basically stripped the entire system down. For this video, I'm focusing on turning this shell into a PC build, so I won't go too deep into each individual component. And here it is, the PS4 case. As you can see, the space inside is extremely tight, especially the height. It's only about 4 centimeters. That alone makes this a pretty big challenge. So here are the components I chose for this build. First, the motherboard. I went with a B75 Mini ITX board. I'm planning to place it right here, but this plastic frame is getting in the way, so I'll have to remove it. Once that's out of the way, I can finally position the board properly. But then I noticed something else. The plastic shell is blocking all the I/O ports, so I had to mark the area and cut it out. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Now comes the part that took the most thinking: how to mount the motherboard. The plastic shell is very thin, so I can't use traditional standoffs because the screws would just go straight through the panel. So I came up with a different solution: hot glue. I cut small pieces. Then I used a sharp tool to create small holes in those pieces, melted them slightly, and stuck them onto the plastic surface to act as mounting points. And finally, I placed the motherboard on top and screwed it in. And honestly, it's way more solid than I expected. So yeah, that's the motherboard securely mounted. After securing the motherboard, the next challenge is finding a place for the GPU. And honestly, this might be one of the hardest parts. If I plug it directly into the board, the height becomes a major issue. I won't be able to close the top panel at all, but then I found a solution in this package right here. Let's unbox it and see what it is. This is a 90-degree riser cable, which means I can mount the GPU along the side of the motherboard instead of sticking straight up. Speaking of the GPU, I'm going with a low-profile card, the K1200. But even then, I still had to trim down part of the casing to make everything fit properly. At this point, both the motherboard and GPU fit neatly inside the shell. The total height is only about 3.5 centimeters, which should be just enough to close the top panel. So I tried putting it back on, and something's blocking it. Oh no, it's the audio I/O port. There's no way around it. I had to cut out a small section to make room for it. Once that's done, I should finally be able to close the top panel. Next up, cooling. And this part gave me a lot of trouble. Because the case is so thin, I couldn't find any cooler that fits within a 2 centimeter height limit. Even most low-profile coolers are thicker than that. So yeah, this turned into a really tough problem. At this point, I had to compromise. I decided to go with a stock Intel cooler since it's cheap and easy to find, but even that was still too thick to close the lid. So I came up with an idea. I removed the fan completely and kept only the aluminum heatsink. Now the question is, where do I get airflow from? Well, I had to compromise again. I cut a circular hole on the top panel, then mounted a separate fan on the outside of the case. This way, the fan can pull in fresh air directly and cool the heatsink much more effectively, instead of being trapped inside a closed space. Next is the CPU. I'm using an i7-2700K for this build. And for RAM, because of the tight space, I had to go with low-profile sticks instead of the taller ones. I'm running 2 times 8 gigabytes, so a total of 16 gigabytes. Now comes the PSU, and honestly, this part was a headache. Finding a power supply that fits inside this case is extremely difficult. Even an SFX PSU is way too big, like several times taller than the PS4 shell itself. Luckily, I managed to find a 200-watt PSU from a pre-built system. It's super compact, and it fits my requirements perfectly. But of course, it's not that simple. When I tried placing it inside, there were still bits of plastic getting in the way. So, once again, I had to cut them out. After that, I tried fitting the PSU again, and yeah, it still didn't sit quite right. So, more cutting. At this point, the PSU finally fits inside this tight space. But the problems don't stop there. When I tried to close the top panel, the power supply was blocking it. So yeah, I had to cut the top panel again. After trimming it down, everything started to come together much better. The layout is clean, compact, and there's basically no wasted space at all. Before I close everything up and turn it into a complete unit, there are still a few issues I need to fix. First, the CPU power cable. It's way too short and can't reach the connector. So I had to buy a 4-pin extension cable to solve that. Next, the power button. Instead of creating a completely new one, I decided to reuse the original button from the PS4 case. After securing it with hot glue, I tested the click and feedback, and honestly, it works surprisingly well. At this point, everything is pretty much done. I just need to connect the CPU fan, plug in the power cables, and finally install the storage drive. Now comes the moment of truth, putting the top panel back on. It was a bit tricky at first, but in the end, everything snapped into place. Overall, it doesn't look too different from the original. The only thing sticking out are the CPU fan and the audio I/O port. Everything else still looks clean and well aligned. Honestly, it just looks like a PS4 with a custom fan mod. The total cost for all the components in this build is around $150. Honestly, if you're someone who enjoys tinkering and experimenting, this can be a really fun project. But if you're looking for a stable, reliable PC for everyday use, this is definitely not the most optimal approach. And here's why. Most of these parts aren't designed with power efficiency in mind, so they tend to generate more heat compared to typical mini PCs. On top of that, the tight internal space limits proper airflow. Everything is packed in so closely that heat can build up over time, especially during long gaming sessions. Alright, I'm really excited to finally power this thing on and test its performance. Before jumping into gaming, I want to check the temperatures of both the CPU and GPU first. I'll start with Cinebench R23. This CPU is known for being power hungry and running pretty hot, but in real testing the results were actually better than expected. The highest temperature I saw was around 75 degrees Celsius, and it mostly stayed around 60 degrees Celsius, which isn't bad at all. It's probably thanks to the higher airflow from that external fan, which seems to cool better than the stock solution. Next up is the GPU, and yeah, it runs pretty hot. The hotspot temperature goes above 80 degrees Celsius, while the average sits around 70 degrees Celsius, but it quickly climbs past 80 after a short time. That's definitely hotter than normal. And it makes sense. Everything is packed so tightly inside, there's basically no real airflow getting in to cool it down. Alright, let's move on to gaming performance. In CS2, it still manages around 60 FPS on low settings. It's not super smooth, but for a budget setup, this is a decent playable experience. Now for Cyberpunk 2077. This is where things get rough. The system struggles hard just to push close to 20 FPS at 1080 Plo, and honestly, it feels pretty bad. I dropped it down to 720p and that brought it up to around 30 FPS, but at that point, it's really just barely playable. At the end of the day, this isn't a powerful machine. But it is unique. It breaks the usual rules of how a PC is supposed to be. It's really just barely playable. At the end of the day, this isn't a powerful machine. But it is unique. It breaks the usual rules of how a PC is supposed to be built. And for me, that's what made this project so fun. What do you think about it? Let me know down in the comments.